Hello again. Welcome to another edition of CropLife Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, editor of CropLife magazine, here again with Lara Sowinski, our group editor, to talk shop. Laura, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Eric. Good to be here.
Good. So listen, last time we had you on, you were teasing a PrecisionAg Alliance meeting that was going to be taking place on April 28th, I believe. So that is now in the past. So why don't you update our viewers on what your key takeaways or highlights were from that event?
Absolutely. Thank you. It was actually a really good meeting on all fronts. And I mean that sincerely from a content point of view. We had a 2-hour session in the morning of the 28th, and we had a 1-hour session in the afternoon. As a moderator and an editor, for many years, I can say, and I'm sure you could concur, that when you have a great group of panelists and speakers, your job is pretty much done for you. And I was lucky enough to have some great folks on the panel. We started off with Kyle Wellborn of the Yield Lab. And Kyle gave us a great overview of the ag tech sector in terms of VC investments right now, what's going on. I jotted down a stat only because it was pretty impressive from one year to the next. So for 2021, worldwide ag tech investments, and I should say for our viewers who don't know, the Alliance is hyper-focused, strictly focused on precision ag. So ag tech was our theme, of course, and more precisely what we were looking at was first quarter meeting. We wanted to kind of set the stage. Where are we at with precision ag in terms of not only investments, as Kyle showed us during his presentation, but really where is it trending? What part of ag tech is, jumping, and why? So, but I think what is really profound in terms of how quickly and fast this space is expanding. So last year, worldwide ag tech investments, 51.7 billion. And the year prior, 2020, it was 27.8 billion. So, I mean, that was an 85% jump. So that's sizable when we're talking about that kind of money. US is still the biggest market for ag tech investments. And they're pretty much across the board. I mean, anything from e-grocery to alternative proteins. There's just a lot of investment going into this space. So Kyle, as I said, kind of set the stage for us in terms of what we're looking at, how hot the space is. And then the remainder of the morning session, I had an excellent roundtable. 3 guys, Kevin Krieg from Intellinair, Bruce Moeller, CEO of Aquaspy, and Aquaspy is our newest Alliance member, and Bill Northey. Many folks know Bill. Most recently, he started as CEO of the Agribusiness Association of Iowa. And our last session in the afternoon, I was speaking one-on-one with Aaron Hutchinson. He's the CEO of CropTrack. So I was somewhat thinking I was going to have all my transcripts and everything set to go, Eric, to talk with you today in more detail about the Alliance. But I will say it was so meaty and the conversations were so in-depth that it's on me, but I don't have everything set to go. But I did want to give you asked for some highlights. And we talked, of course, not only about, row crops, but the specialty crops too. I mean, what's going on there and why does it matter? And why should ag retailers care? Why should growers? We kind of covered a lot of space, if you will. One thing that I will say that was kind of interesting, and again, admittedly, this was more on the specialty crops, but the conversation took a nice turn when I was talking to Aaron at CropTrack about the food supply chain and the ag space, the farm level, like the data that's collected there, somehow it doesn't always seem to make it into the broader food supply chain. Like, we know what's happening from the packing house forward, from the food manufacturer facility. But we don't know always, it's always like that black hole still. So is it lack of data? Is the collection not happening, or the tools not happening, or is that data not moving with it? And he kind of gave a really good example. He said, this was a recent campaign that he had helped work on. It was a meet the farmer. So they were putting like a QR code or a label, a sticker kind of thing on some produce, whereby the consumer can, like, okay, this farmer, it was grown on his or her farm. This is where the farm was. It was great. It was a great way to kind of engage the consumer and, kind of make that investment into, this brand, this, feeling good about it. It's not just a commodity. There's somebody behind it. And he said, but oftentimes really the information, it's not that it's not collected. I mean, the good news is there's a lot of data that's collected, and we know this, by the tools that we see that are being used at the farm. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happening at the farm that the farmers, the growers, the ag community is privy to and uses in the operations, but it doesn't travel with the food throughout the food supply chain. And he said, that's kind of a tragedy, because it's there, it's just not going with the food. So in other words, we can do more than meet the farmer. We could actually know a heck of a lot more about this orange that we're eating. And, so, and he said, he goes, what if we treated strawberries like we treat wine? In other words, why am I paying, $60 for this bottle of Cab? Well, because I know it was, Napa Cab. It was from this particular field. It's reserved. This is how the winemaker blended it. It was held for this thing. It was on the leaves for, I mean, on and on and on and on. He goes, well, what if we said, well, these strawberries were produced, Mount Hood. I know the terroir. I know that it's going to taste like this. It's going to be different from the Salinas grown. And it was, we kind of laughed at first, but he had a really good point that, if we knew more about the food, and not that that's not happening. I mean, certainly, consumers are demanding more. So in response, we can learn a little bit more about the food. And sometimes we want to know that, we want this particular banana from this thing, or maybe even an organic banana versus a conventionally grown, whatever it is, the data is there. So we kind of had fun, talking about that. But I kind of wanted to throw some of the questions that we were talking about. If anyone has their finger on the pulse, that would be you. So I actually wanted to ask you and kind of tap dance my way around your putting me on the spot here. Kind of some of the things that you're seeing. I know that internally I've been asking you, we've been discussing, as a group, as a company, what's happening now. I mean, when we're looking to the fall, and are we still feeling that the fertilizer issues that we were discussing a month ago, are they still as they were? Have things changed? Have things eased up? What's the current conversation amongst ag retailers and their customers right now? What are the big worries, or what things have kind of eased up a bit? What's your sense like today? What's happening today that was different like a month ago?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Laura. I know that, the most of the folks I'm talking to in the marketplace are saying that, they have the supply they need to get fertilizer, crop protection products for the most part, not an absolute, but for the most part to the growers that are looking for that stuff here in the spring. The bigger problem, of course, has been, planting, just because I know I'm based here in Ohio and it's been cool and wet, and I don't think much planting has gotten done. And I'm hearing pretty much the same from folks I've talked to in places like Nebraska and Iowa and Illinois. So, we need some better weather. But I mean, the planting window in the Midwest where we're at, folks basically have until like the beginning of June to get stuff in the ground. So we're still about a month out, but it'll be interesting. I'll be watching the planting numbers as they come out here over the next couple of weeks to see how the percentages are versus historic norms, and we'll go from there. So
Yeah, yeah. On that topic, I mean, we can't control the weather too much. But I think an interesting little side note to you guys are getting a lot of rain out here on the West Coast, drought and more drought. And last night's news, it looks like La Nina is here to stay a little bit longer. She stayed well past her welcome. So we're looking at probably another extremely hot, dry summer, more wildfires. And for next year, probably a 50-50 chance as to whether we'll get any kind of decent rainfall to speak of. So I know I mentioned one other news item this week that caught my eye was new seeds that they're experimenting with that are drought resistant wheat. So a test pilot in Brazil, as reported by the Wall Street Journal, was pretty successful. So what's your feeling on that? And kind of the reason I ask you, I mean, part of this Alliance conversation last week, and certainly our coverage is you and I and everyone on our editorial team are talking to folks, we're in still this really untethered environment right now, not knowing how things are going to shake out, what they're going to look like, this fall, as you mentioned, next year. So some folks clearly are looking like, okay, if this is really what we're looking at for the long term now, the new normal, we have to consider things like different seeds and the addition and the supplement of more ag tech tools. We don't have the labor that we used to have. We don't have, I mean, things are really still in flux. So kind of threw a lot at you, but anyway, that seed news item really caught my eye. Anything that you're seeing on that front?
nothing recently, but I remember a few years ago when I was at one of the crop protection company press events, and they were talking about developments, products they had in their pipeline and stuff that was coming down the line. And it seems to me that one of their seed technologies that they were working on pretty readily was drought resistant seed for, I believe it was corn. And again, that, I suspect, given conditions out west, and I was talking to someone earlier today, and they mentioned in West Texas that you have to go down almost 20 inches into the soil to find any type of moisture, which I think way too far, way beyond the root zone for most of the developing seed that you would put in the ground. So drought resistant varieties, I'm sure probably will become, I imagine that's going to become a very big topic of conversation in a lot of the United States going forward. So.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely.
All right. Well, before we get too far afield from what we were talking about, you mentioned the PrecisionAg Alliance, of course, and precision agriculture is something that we're preparing for here at CropLife, because coming up this summer, we're going to have the Tech Hub Live event in Indianapolis. And I know we've been teasing that, but we did get an update to that this week. I guess there's going to be a before the show event taking place. So now the dates have moved from to July 19th through the 21st, with everything kicking off the evening of the 19th. And I know myself, I was looking at, some of the goings on that will be taking place the night of July 19th. And I guess the term is foaling, correct? Is that what you saw?
Well, I'm glad that you took a stab at pronouncing that word, because it could be fouling or foaling. I'm not sure yet. But
well, I know when I saw it, I immediately thought, wait a minute, we're going to start delivering baby horses. But that's the wrong spelling for foaling. Yeah, you're right. This is FOWLING. So
correct. Right.
So it looks, looking at it, it sort of looks like this sport, it is a sport, has three parents. The first being, of course, bowling. There are 10 bowling pins, as there is in bowling, that you have to try to knock over to score points. The second parent, I guess, would be cornhole, because it looks like the bowling pins are situated on top of a board that is some distance away from another board where there are an identical set of pins set up as well. But then the third parent is the weirdest, of course, and that's football. You actually, instead of a bowling ball or frozen turkey as you would during Thanksgiving, you try to knock the pins over using a football. So bowling, it sounds fascinating. I promise our viewers I will have a video camera there to video it. If you can't make it live to the event, you'll be able to see what this was all about. I'm sure it'll be interesting.
Well, you know, there is craft beer that's served while we're doing this.
That certainly won't hurt.
I think that right there, it's a very successful night. We know it's going to be a hit. So
Yeah,
it was
so
well worth extending the program.
Yeah, so if people were planning to attend Tech Hub Live and you're planning to get in the morning of the 20th of July, come in the night of the 19th and try this this three-parent sport for yourself, for bowling, I guess we would call it. And yeah, it should be interesting. So
that's right. We will report back. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and one other thing, I know you and I actually, about a week or so ago, the Surface Transportation Board was having a meeting kind of to address some concerns from our friends in agriculture. And you and I were looking at that topic, particularly as it pertains to railroad transport. So if you want to give our viewers a little update on what we found out from that story and let them know what where they could go to find out more information.
Right. So the Surface Transportation Board held 2 days of meetings last week to address concerns, not only from ag shippers, in particular the National Grain and Feed Association had formally reached out to STB for some assistance with deteriorating rail service pretty much across the board with all the class ones that they were working with. And the Surface Transportation Board, to their credit, responded, and hence the 2-day meeting last week. They likewise are working on putting emergency kind of regs in place whereby it would give the STB a little more teeth to enforce the service standards that the shippers are expected, based on their rates and their contract. So I think the meetings were very good. At the very least, it really sort of brought the issue of rail service to the forefront, not only in the mainstream media, of course, but I was encouraged. A lot of times, the agencies move kind of slow. There's no secret about that, but I really do believe that the STB heard the shippers loud and clear, and they're making some moves to address that. And of course, it's not just the ag shippers that are affected. I mean, it really is sectors across the board. I mean, whether it's consumer goods, other shippers that use rail, and quite frankly, because of high fuel prices and capacity constraints on the truck side, shippers are really incorporating rail more and more where and when they can for their supply chain. And to have the service really as bad as it is right now, there's no way to sugarcoat that. It's an urgent thing, and so we hope to have some definitive news, some more news coming up here real soon.
Okay, yeah. So viewers, please stay tuned and check out our websites. Of course, Laura and I will be following the story as things develop. So, well, very good. Well, one of the things, since we're talking about a little bit about shipping, I know I was reading a story this morning a little bit about the Russia-Ukraine situation. And, of course, there's a lot of concern that with the war going on in the country, that plantings in that part of the world might be non-existent, I guess, if you will. But they get a little bit of good news through the end of April, according to sources. About 20% of the acreage that was planned to be planted in 2022 has actually been planted. That's a little over 3 million hectares. And I apologize, I didn't do the conversion on what that is in acres, but 3 million hectares planted, mostly wheat, oats, and barley. But they also mentioned that things such as potatoes, soybean, and spring canola are also some other crops that have got into the ground there in the Ukraine. So again, like I say, 20% as of the end of April. And that was a 56% increase from the beginning of the month, when a little over 1.9 million hectares had been planted. So in portions of the Ukraine where they're able to plant, apparently they're making some good headway.
That's great news. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, good news in terms of not to rain on your parade. I know y'all have enough rain right now, but ADM did have their earnings report last week, and by all accounts, they're doing well. 53% profit increase over its most recent quarter, but with the cautionary note that ADM expects reduced supply of crops to continue for the next few years because of a weak Canadian canola crop, short South American crops, and the war in the Black Sea. So their CEO came out and said, we cannot take an abundant and efficient supply of food for granted. So yeah, tight supply. So that's very good news. We need all the good news like that we can right now, for sure.
All right. Well, speaking of good news, it's time for your favorite part of the video. Laura, time to play fun with numbers.
Hey, I'm still waiting for my Barbie Ferrari. I'm hitting 1 for 1. Last week.
We'll see how you do. We'll see how you do right now. So, all right.
Ready. We're ready.
Here is your number. It is 4.3%. Your choices is 4.3%. Is it A, the percentage of corn that has been planted in the US so far this year, as of the time we're recording this here in early May? Is it B, the percentage of soybean that has been planted in the US so far this year? C, is it the percentage decrease of agricultural greenhouse gas emissions between 2019 and 2020? Or is it D, the percentage of free time that my son has spent this year on yard work?
Well, it's a tough one.
I'll clue you in. That D number is way high versus his percentage. I swear he's made a deal with the weather gods, because every time he's with me and it would be a day that it would be good to mow the lawn, it rains. So
Well, I'm glad you eliminated that, because I was thinking it's between C and D. So now that D's out of the running, I'm going for C.
Hey, you are doing well, my friend. Yes, it is indeed. According to USDA, they did a survey and they found that between 2019 and 2020, the greenhouse gas emissions for agriculture down 4.3%, or 28.8 million metric tons.
Excellent.
So good, yeah, good news. Good news there. They cited such things as soil management, fertilizer application practices, and tillage practices for the reasons for that decline in greenhouse gas emissions for the industry. So
that's
congratulations,
fantastic,
my friend. Nice job.
Yeah, thank you. Good deal. I'm starting to like this game.
You're doing well at it. I'm going to have to make the questions tougher. So
yeah.
And if you're interested, the percentage of corn that's been planted as of this date is 7%.
Okay.
Soybean is 3%. So
oh wow. Okay. Great.
That's why I threw those in there,
Good
because
one.
they're all sort of in that same range, all single digits at the moment. Hopefully those numbers will go up as we go forward. So
good. All righty.
all right. Well, Laura,
Hey,
thanks for joining us this week. As always, pleasure to have you on. Viewers, hope you enjoyed the information and everything else we gave you today. We'll see you again next week. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.